Spelunky 2 is a very difficult game. Somehow, Derek Yu and his team managed to make an even tough game than the original. Although I do not claim to be expert level, I am quite good at Spelunky and am in the top 40 average daily challenge of all time for Spelunky 1, so I do know a thing or two about both games. I'll be the first to admit I make stupid mistakes, just like anyone else, but I have seen many players struggle with the game, and I would like to offer some general tips that may help you with your adventures. The biggest mistake I see new or inexperienced players make is to immediately start using their ropes and bombs as soon as the game begins. You want to hold on to these items for as long as you can and consider only using them if 100% necessary, or once you have stockpiled more. I would always recommend buying as many ropes and bombs as you can from a shop, and if you notice a crate that is out of reach, it is always worth using a bomb or rope to get it. The only time I would personally not go for a crate is if I only had one bomb left and I am planning on heading into the secret areas, such as the black market, that require part of the scenery to be blown up. Even if a crate requires 2 or 3 bombs to access it, it is still worth getting if you manage to get a crate with a bomb bag or ropes inside of it. You might even stumble across a 12-pack of bombs or another useful item. There is always a chance that you might end up with a useless parachute though. Bomb cooking is always an option if you don't have the sticky paste, but be very careful not to blow yourself up in the process. Sometimes the timing can be tricky, and you might find yourself wasting more bombs than you intended just to get something down. Be on the lookout for items buried in the ground. It is possible to even find jetpacks buried, which are arguably one of the most useful items in the game. You can see these items via the U-Jet Eye or the spectacles. With all this said, you may find that many items, gold and pets, are accessible to you without the need of using ropes or bombs. I notice a lot of new players will immediately use their items to obtain resources, but much of the time they haven't checked their surroundings by looking up or down. Quite often, there is an alternative route to the resource. For example, you may have seen the situation with the skulls piled 2 blocks high. Try whipping the top of the layer, and you'll have an access point to higher levels. In a similar vein, you can destroy the skulls by picking up rocks, skulls, or bodies and throwing them at the skull piles. Don't forget that spikes can be walked over, and if you use a rope you can drop safely to the bottom without instant death. You can even cling to the side and drop gently into spike pits, or even jump one level up onto spikes. Remember that you can always jump and grab onto ledges, so use your situational awareness to predict how many items you'll need to use, or if you can avoid using them at all. In the jungle, the trees allow you to access almost all areas, and if you have the climbing gloves or the jump boots, you'll have access to even more areas. If you have the jetpack, you no longer really need to rely on ropes and have free access to all areas, meaning you should use your ropes for any amount of gold stuck on spikes. Health is very important to many players, but I feel obtaining pets or damsels is not as important as you might think, especially on the first stage. Coinciding with my first tip, you do not want to use resources to obtain damsels unless you have enough bombs or ropes, an item is stuck with the damsel, or a high value piece of gold will be yielded from the rescue of the damsel. With that said, if you see an altar, you want to get those pets no matter what. Similar to the crate situation, I would only recommend not getting the pet for an altar sacrifice if you have 1 bomb left, and would actually recommend using all your ropes even for 1 sacrifice. 1 sacrifice is worth 1 common item, and 2 is worth the blood cup, which you can use to get potentially infinite health by collecting the blood of enemies. This is why sacrificing pets and other bodies is so important. Stun enemies are worth even more influence, but make sure to keep track of your time. You only get 3 minutes to complete each level, unless you have the clover, which gives you an additional 2 minutes before the ghost arrives. When bringing damsels to the exit, it can be very tempting to immediately deposit them through the exit. I recommend keeping them in a safe spot next to the exit if you haven't explored the entire area, as there is still a chance there may be an altar you haven't seen yet. Be careful when trying to take a pet past an exit. I have accidentally deposited pets through the exit when I was planning on bringing them to an altar nearby. You can throw a pet past the door if needed. You may also want to consider buying items and getting all the croats on a level you can before making sacrifices, as it guarantees the item you rewarded will not be the same as one already on the level. You'll often find yourself in situations where you'll need to carry multiple items to an exit at once. It is important not to drop to another level until you've dropped all the items you want down, or you'll have to use a rope to get them back. Make sure you always carry the cursed part last, as you never want to drop it, and always check that you aren't dropping your items into a spike pit or other hazardous area. Pets will run on their own, so it's always worth checking they aren't going to run into spike pit. Otherwise, you can drop them down first, but be sure not to harm them with your other items you drop down afterwards. It is also safer sometimes to let them run off the edge, as this will help save time reclaiming other items. If you do not feel comfortable carrying many items at once, or running out of time before the ghost arrives, I recommend carrying items in this priority order. Idols can be put on altars to create golden monkeys which yield a higher rate of gold than just depositing them at the exit. However, if you have too many items to carry, there is no point in creating these monkeys, and there is always a risk they might die before you have gained more gold than you would have just depositing the idol at the exit. Unlike Spelunky 1 though, the golden monkey can be carried between levels, so if you have no important items to carry, you can always go for the monkey. Another important note is to never sell your idol at a shop unless you feel you don't have enough time to take it to the exit. You'll receive more money for taking it to the exit. As mentioned before, you want to get as many bodies on the altar as possible, so this should be one of your top priorities. Even if you have the blood cup, you still want to deposit bodies and pets on the altar, as you'll get the blood in return for the sacrifices, and eventually get royal jelly, which is worth 7 hit points. The Matuk, or pickaxe, is one of the most important items as far as I'm concerned. It's far more common than the alien weapon, and will increase your gold output and resource collection by a lot. As with bombs and ropes, I see new pairs hammering away at the pickaxe like it's a diamond pickaxe from Minecraft. Now, a Matuk only has so many uses, and you really want to be smart about how you use it. Only go for clusters of gold that allow you to use the pickaxe once or twice. I tend to only retrieve big gold clusters or gems, and will use the pickaxe a few more times if I can reclaim red gems, which are worth the most money. Do not go for small gold clusters unless it will give you access to higher gold thresholds. On a quick side note, gems and gold go up in value every stage, so you may want to consider stockpiling resources to claim gold at higher values later in your playthrough. On rare occasions, you may even find another Matuk whilst having one already. If this is the case, then any amount of gold is worth getting with your older pickaxe, before swapping to the new one with more uses and then changing level. Always use your pickaxe to avoid having to use bombs. Any amount of uses of the pickaxe is worth getting an item you don't already have. Do not mess with the ghost in this game. In Spelunky 1, the ghost was an important part of making extra money, and although the ghost does still change gems into diamonds, I don't know how you would have time to get them. The ghost moves insanely fast and will eventually split into even faster ghosts. You should always be monitoring your time, and at 2 minutes 30, if you are still doing tasks in the level, you might want to think about getting to the exit. If you see the message your voice echoes in here, at the start of the level, you really need to be quick, as these levels are massive, and I always find I don't have enough time to do absolutely everything the level has to offer. The cursed pot is a great way to make extra money, but can be more harm than good. Be sure to take it to the exit before destroying it, and don't let other enemies destroy it by accident. Bomb explosions are an easy way to accidentally destroy the pot as well. One thing you can try is to destroy the jar opposite to the side of the level the exit is on, or further away from the exit. The ghost will appear on the side of the screen you are closest to. If you don't have enough money for an item in the shop, then you can keep the jar next to the shop and break it once you know the level is clear. This should give you the extra gold you need for an item that you want. I find this is especially important if you get a shop selling a jetpack near the start of a play session when you don't have a lot of gold. The camera is a good way to slow down the ghost. Turkeys are awesome, and I notice a lot of players have no respect for these feathered friends. Although yes, we all know blowing up turkey or setting them on fire will yield turkey meat, which is worth a hit point, is just not worth wasting a bomb over. Turkeys have an extra spring in their jump, so they will give you access to far higher areas, especially if you jump off turkeys as it is jumping. They also have a glide ability, which means you can drop down onto spikes without dying. They can even walk on thorns in the jungle. When taming a turkey, make sure it isn't going to throw itself into a hazardous area. If you see a turkey is going to fall down a drop, try whipping it and moving it to a safer area before taming it, or wait for it to be facing the direction it won't run into harm's way. Turkeys will also absorb the damage you would have taken from enemies when riding them. A turkey pen is almost always worth depositing the turkeys at. You will need 2 put into the pen to get the key to the treasure without upsetting Yang. It is always worth trying to get turkeys to the pen, as there is always a chance there could be items or high amounts of gold inside. Be warned though, there is a chance there might be absolutely nothing useful inside, and sometimes rigged chests can spawn and alert Yang. If you get a rigged chest, you can try to throw the bomb away from the door, and it should stop the turkeys from being blown away on the other side. Do not attempt to steal turkeys from the pen or bring Yang dead turkeys, you'll upset him. As you have access to other caves and sublevels, it can prove useful to check what loot is inside the turkey pen before depositing the turkeys. Sometimes you might even get lucky and have access to the turkey loot through another entrance. With all this in mind, turkeys are not worth dying over. Be sure to hop off one if you think you are heading for certain death, such as lava pits. Tame turkeys can be carried on top of ridden turkeys and brought through exits, so you may find clever ways to access higher areas by carrying a turkey, jumping off another turkey, and then using the carried turkey to jump even higher. One of the only times I would say making turkey meat is a valid option is on 1-4, as you cannot get the turkey to one of the exits unless you have an opening in the terrain. They cannot be carried through the caves. Use a lit torch or use a bomb, but make sure you leave the turkey next to buried gems to retrieve them if possible. And remember, turkeys can be sacrificed as well. Other rideable animals I rarely find as useful, as they do not have the ability to glide. I will usually only ride these animals if I have a jetpack, as you can use the jetpack whilst riding any animal. Although the shopkeeper is easier to deal with than in Spelunky 1, I do not recommend engaging him unless you are an expert. You have enough to deal with as it is, let alone having to deal with the hardest enemy in the game every level. Combat encounters with a shopkeeper can also result in destruction of key items such as the jetpack or bomb bags, so best to keep buying objects and refraining from destroying his property. You'll want to buy as many items you don't already have as you can. Remember, even buying an item you think is useless may prove useful, as it will give you a chance of getting another item when making sacrifices. I recommend buying items in a similar order if possible, but you should decide which items you find the most useful for your playstyle. If you buy all items in a shop, the shopkeeper will give you a discount next time you see him. You can only get one discount a game as far as I'm aware, so these do not stack. This means that it is sometimes worth buying an item you already have, or an item you don't necessarily want in order to get the discount. The dice game is also a great way to get new items. If enough time allows, then you should always attempt the game, as the quality of the items that spawn is often quite good. Just be sure not to throw the dice out of the shop. This is especially important if you have the pitcher's mitt. Most people already know this, but unless you are going for a specific run and have the Udjat Eye, you should always go through the jungle to get access to the black market, rather than going through the volcano level. Always go for the moon challenges, especially the first one. They'll give you extra time for the level with the clover, and access to more items and gold if done resourcefully. As far as I'm concerned, Spelunky is and always will be about making money. No amount of gold is too small to go for, as long as you don't have to use bombs or ropes. There are exceptions to this rule, such as time restraints, but generally speaking, you should stick to this mentality. As mentioned previously, find alternative routes to retrieve gold and only use bombs and ropes to get gold if you have a surplus supply. I'll usually start using bombs to retrieve gold if I have a plus 10 amount, and I tend to only go for red gems or gems that have more gold surrounding them. This tip is one of the most important, and it will negate the need to engage the shopkeeper and give you a higher score if you complete the game. A lot of new players seem to avoid the jars and pots scattered around levels. You should always try to break these jars, as there is a chance money and gems will be inside of them. I think the reason a lot of players avoid the pots is because they can contain harmful enemies and on rare occasions nasty scorpions. You will always need to put yourself in harm's way to make good money in Spelunky, so you should get used to dealing with enemies that spawn from these pots. Throw the pot away from you, or whip it and stand far enough away that whatever is inside won't harm you. Idols are the best way to make large amounts of money, and there are several traps that you'll need to deal with. All involve speed and agility. I'll give some tips on the starting area idols. For the first idol, if you see skulls stacked up on either side of the trap, do not whip the pile to destroy it on either side, or you'll risk triggering the trap. Instead, throw objects from the side and destroy the skulls layer by layer, then take the idol. Do not get yourself stuck on one of the sides of the trap. Always run towards the side you want to explore next. It's important to note that these traps can destroy terrain below, so make sure you don't destroy an altar or shop by accident. The jungle idol may look intimidating, but it's not as bad once you've done it once or twice. It's all about speed and timing. Just don't even think about it. Get in, get out. As for the volcano idol, I do not recommend taking it unless you are certain you can escape. It's instant death if you get the lava above on you, and sometimes you can get yourself caught in an area if the lava is blocking you. Lava can often fall down into other areas, making the level very hazardous. Just a general tip here, but in the jungle I notice a lot of players are scared of thorns. Turkeys can walk on thorns, and having either the spike or jump boots will let you walk on thorns. That's right, jump boots have the same effect. Hired hands were useless in Spelunky 1, and they are useless in Spelunky 2. With that said though, they do come in far more useful in this game. You should try and hold on to hired hands and sacrifice them, as they are worth a lot of influence and can often be worth an item. Another use for hired hands is to bring multiple items to the next level. I don't know what their problem is, but sometimes they just won't pick up an item. But if you can get them to pick up a weapon or a pickaxe when you're already carrying a primary item, they will still be holding the item in the next level. If you don't want to use rope to get some gold, try throwing a hired hand up towards it. You'll receive the gold by them touching it. Be warned, I have had countless runs ruined by helping hands. The following footage shows one of the worst betrayals. If you don't have an item that can get you to higher ground, you could consider jumping on an enemy that is at a higher altitude, and you'll be able to spring up to the ledge. This takes a bit of practice, but can be performed on bats, spiders, and many other enemies. The curse and poison mechanics are new to Spelunky 2, and I have to say they are probably the most annoying thing in the game, and ruin runs for even the most experienced players. I'm guessing that these mechanics were put into place to stop players stockpiling health from the blood cup and health pickups, but they are annoying nonetheless. The best tip I can provide is don't get poisoned, and especially don't get cursed. The most common way to get poisoned is the scorpions, so avoid those assholes at any cost, and only engage them when it's safe to do so. You can get cursed from getting hit by the cursed pot, or further into the game by getting hit by specific enemies. If you get poisoned and are low on health, drop everything that you are doing and try to find a damsel. Take them to the exit and you'll be cured. Poison will slowly drop your health by 1 hit point. Curses, on the other hand, will drop your health to 1 hit point, and you'll die if you take any damage. Although you will not need to worry about time as much, you will need to be very careful, and pets and the blood cup will become redundant when it comes to getting extra health. As far as I'm aware, the only way to lift the curse other than the second moon challenge is to sacrifice a pet or enough bodies on the altar. This should be your top priority when cursed. Completing the second moon challenge will give you an item that can cure curses and poison, but be sure to only attempt the challenge if you know you have enough health to complete it. As with most other tasks, I find inexperienced players will waste bombs on bosses that they don't need to. For the first boss on level 1-4, you should always let Quillback roll and destroy the left and right paths before killing him. He will always drop free bombs and turkey meat, so he's always worth killing once you have both paths open up. Why make both paths accessible? Well, although you will only want to take one path, it is always worth checking the cave opposite to the path you'll be taking, as there will be gold and items possibly inside. Sometimes items will spawn under the caves, so it's worth dropping down, getting the items, and then using a rope to go back if time allows. Alternatively, you can use a bomb to get access to other paths. I almost always go to the jungle in this situation, as it will give me access to the black market, but the volcano has its share of secrets as well. With Quillback, it is always important to try not blowing up the precious bombs he'll drop. Try not to blast the shotgun at him too much, as you'll risk blowing up the bomb. Throwing a lit torch at him can also risk blowing up the bombs he is carrying. If you have the spiked shoes, I find this is the safest way to kill him, but be careful not to jump on him when he's rolling. A carefully placed sticky bomb can also be an easy way to get around the fight. As for Olmec, I recommend not using bombs at all for this fight. Always run to the right and check to see if those weird jungle kids have brought you any items for rescuing them. On a side note, you should always try rescuing these kids in the caves of the jungle area. If you rescue all 3, they'll give you a 12 pack of bombs. Lure Olmec to the ladder on the right and jump on his head, then stand to the left to get him to jump to the left. Look up and see if there are any crates, as more often than not there will be, then use ropes to retrieve them. As for the fight itself, don't use bombs. Allow him to jump over you and crush the ground below. For the next phase of the battle, wait on top of his head until many bombs have dropped from his head, and then destroy the lights on the bottom to get him to drop down below. If you have let him drop enough bombs, you can sometimes skip phase 3 of the fight completely. I do not want to spoil what the reward for killing Olmec is if you haven't found out already, but just know that there is a key item involved that will make your life a lot easier in upcoming levels, so I say it's always worth trying to defeat him. Hopefully, some of these tips will aid you in your adventures. There is obviously a lot of stuff that I haven't been able to cover in this video. I haven't even mentioned some of the later levels, but I intend on making some other videos if I get a chance. Feel free to ask a comment in the chat if you need help with something or clarification on anything mentioned in the video. Never let the difficulty of Spelunky get you down. It is a tremendously difficult game that requires experience and refinement to master. I wish you all the best in your adventures.